האם זה באמת סגולה בדוקה? הסגולה ללמוד בזה?
Erev Tov, good evening, Dober V'Yetcher. We are in the Zera Shimshon on Parsha Naso. We are looking at Os Zion, section 7. Before we begin, let's take a look at a pasuk from our Parsha, actually two psukim, which talk about, which open, I should say, the discussion of Nizirus, of becoming a Nazir, a Nazirite. Let's take a look at those two psukim. This is Perek Vav, Pasuk Aleph and Beis, Psukim Aleph and Beis. Vayedaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, saying, Daber el Bnei Yisrael, speak to Bnei Yisrael, ve'amarta aleihem, and say to them, Ish o Isha, a man or a woman, ki yafli lindor neder nazir, when a man or a woman will explicitly articulate a vow to become a nazir, lahazir lashem, to separate themselves as in the form of a nazirus, a vow of nazirus for Hashem. And we'll see that word lashem, for Hashem, will play an important role in the discussion in the Zera Shimshon piece tonight. So we're going to be talking about a case of a Nazir, and in order to understand the beginning of the piece and other aspects of this section, we need to remind ourselves of one important halacha, one relevant halacha of being a Nazir. A Nazir had to separate himself or herself from drinking wine or consuming any grape products, from becoming tamei mace, in other words, from coming in contact with a dead body, and also from getting, of course, a haircut. We know a Nazir that they grew their hair out very long, and so a Nazir was not able to get a haircut. Those are the three prohibitions that a person was obligated to follow if he or she became a Nazir. The Torah actually talks about what happens if a person becomes a Nazir, and then afterwards they accidentally come in contact with a dead body. Something happens unexpectedly, and inadvertently the person becomes tamei mace, becomes impure because of contact with a dead body. So in such a case, their period of Nazirus, however long they have been a Nazir, is lost. It ends and it doesn't count, and they have to start over from the beginning. And they also bring a korban asham. They bring a guilt offering as part of the ending the first attempted period of Nazirus and beginning again. So we're going to see that Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, who we're going to talk about right at the beginning here, would generally not eat. He had a rule that he would not eat from the korban asham of a person, of a Nazir whose Nazirus ended in this way and had to restart. And we'll talk about why that was and why he made an exception in the specific case that he's going to discuss. Okay, O Zion, section 7, Nedarim Parakam, in Meseches Nedarim in the first chapter, Tanya, the Gemara brought down a brisa. Omar Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik. Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik said, Miyomai lo achalti asham nazir tome. In all of my days, I did not eat from the asham sacrifice of a nazir who had become tame. Ella echad, except for one case, except regarding one specific nazir. And now Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik is going to relate, you're going to tell us about that Nazir. Pam achas, one time, bo adam echad Nazir min hadarom, a man came from the south, yefei einayim v'tov roi, and he had beautiful eyes and a good appearance, ukivutzosav siduros lo taltalim, and his hair was arranged in curls. So this man obviously must have had a very striking appearance for Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik to notice his eyes and his his beautiful face and his curls and his hair. But Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik noticed all of those things. Amar Tilo. So Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik relates that I said to him, Bini, my son, Ma ra'isa lahashchi sa'archa ze noeh. What did you see fit? Why did you see fit to take a vow of Nazirus, which will result in you destroying, meaning shaving off, your beautiful hair? So Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik saw this man with beautiful curls and a beautiful appearance, this handsome, this striking man, come to take the vow of Nazirus. And he said to the man, why are you taking a vow of Nazirus, which will result in you having to cut off all of your hair, which is what a Nazir does at the end of his Nazirus, at the end of the Nazirus period. Omar Li, the man said to me, Roeh ha'yisi la'aba be'iri. I was a shepherd for my father in my town. So the man said, my job was to be a shepherd and take care of the flocks of my father in my city. V'halachti lemal'os mayim min hamayon. And one time I went to fill up water from a spring. V'nistakalti babavu'ah sheli. And I looked at my reflection in the water. So this man, this handsome man, this shepherd, happened to look down into the water and see his reflection. Ufachaz yitzri olai. And my yetzer hara, my evil inclination, flowed over me. Ubikesh letardeni min ha'olam. And it sought to pull me out of the world, to take me away from the world, meaning from olam haba. And the man's meaning was that his yetzer hara suddenly said to him, look at you, you're handsome, you're beautiful. There's so many women who would be attracted to you. And the yetzer hara was trying to convince him to do acts that would take him away from his portion in olam haba, in the next world, because these would be sinful actions. Amarti lo, so the man said, I told my yetzer hara, Russia, wicked one, lama ata misgo'eh ba'olam she'eno shelcha. Why are you acting proud and arrogant in a world that doesn't belong to you? B'mi shehu osid lios rima visoleya. On someone who in the future is destined to become worms and maggots. In other words, every person dies. And so this man said to his yetzer hara, you're acting arrogant and you want me to be all puffed up with arrogance in this world that belongs to Hashem, and Hashem controls everything. We don't control this world. And you also are talking to me to convince me to do averos because of my good looks. My good looks will all end in the grave as they do for all mortals. And the man continued, ha'avoda. This word ha'avoda means the service in the Beis HaMikdash, and this was a way of taking an oath, meaning the man said that he swore by the temple service, sha'agalachecha lashamayim, that I will shave off, I will shave you off, I will shave the hair off, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. In other words, he said to his yetzer hara, you want to make a big deal about my hair and get me to focus on my good looks? I'm going to take an oath to shave off my hair. And that was his way, the man's way of explaining why he became a Nazir. Miyod amadati v'nishakti val rosho. So going back to Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, he said, immediately when I heard this, I jumped up and I kissed this man on his head. Amarti lo, and I said to him, continuing on the next page, top of the next column, Bini, my son, Kimoscha yirbu nozrei nazirus b'Yisrael. Just like you, so too there should multiply many people who take the vow of Nazirus amongst the Jewish people. Meaning, Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik was so impressed with this man and his motivations and his reasoning for becoming a Nazir that he said, I hope more and more people will become a Nazir just like you. Olecha hakosav omer, it is about you that the Torah speaks when it says, Ish V'chuli ki yafle lindor neder nazir lashem, and that's the pasuk we read in the beginning, right from the beginning of Parsha Naso. A man or a woman who will articulate explicitly a vow to become a nazir lashem, for Hashem, lashem shemayim. When a person's intentions to become a nazir are completely lashem shemayim, then that Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik said that's what the pasuk's talking about, and that's what you did in your case. So now the Zera Shimshon is going to ask 5 questions on this unusual and remarkable story. So he begins in the next paragraph. Vikoshe, there's a problem. This is the first questions coming up. Ma zo temiha, what was this bewilderment or question she'asa Shimon HaTzadik, that Shimon HaTzadik made? Why did Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik ask so surprised? What did you see that brought you to become a Nazir and ultimately have to cut off your hair, right? Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik was very surprised and asked a question, and as if he was amazed and shocked by this man's decision to become a Nazir. So the Zera Shimshon says that doesn't seem to make sense. V'halo kaimalon, because isn't it true that we learn in Maseches Sota, Haroeh sota bikilkula, someone who sees a sota, a suspected adulteress, in her disgrace, yazir atzmo min hayayin. That person will want to separate himself from wine by becoming a nazir. V'shema roa sota bikilkula, and perhaps this man had that exact experience of seeing a sota and a suspected adulteress going through the ceremony that suspected adulteresses that a sota would be put through in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, o kedomela, or maybe a similar type experience, meaning perhaps this man became familiar through someone he knew, a neighbor or someone else, who became too used to drinking wine and becoming frivolous and becoming indecent, and that person had a terrible experience or a scandal, and so this man decided, I don't want to take any chances of getting involved and being led astray in that way, so I'll become a Nazir. So the Zera Shimshon's first question is, why would Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik be so shocked that this man became a Nazir when the Gemara in Maseches Sota talks about why people take a vow of Nazirus and how it was very natural and apparently common that if a person witnessed or it became known to someone how wine and too much wine and a life of excess and a life of frivolity can lead to terrible things, so then a person would become a Nazir. So why was Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik so surprised? That's the first question. Another question, Lama Amar Lo, why did Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik say to this man, Se'orcha ze no'eh, why would you do something that will lead you to destroy and shave off this beautiful hair, your beautiful hair? Dimashma, that this implies dafka mipnei shehaya no'eh haya masmiya. This implies that the reason Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik was so surprised was because this man had beautiful hair. But after all different types of people become Nazirim and take the vow of Nazirus. So the second question is basically saying, couldn't Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik, wouldn't it have made more sense for Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik to ask this man, and why are you becoming a Nazir? What motivated you to become a Nazir, as opposed to A, having such shock, apparently being shocked about it, which was the first question, and B, connecting it to this man's beautiful hair? Why is Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik focusing on that, when just asking the question to the man, why did you decide to become a Nazir, would seem to be the more appropriate question for Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik to have asked. V'od hikshem maharsha. And the Zera Shimshon says, in addition to these 2 questions, the famous Gemara commentator, the Maharsha, asked 2 more questions, which will be questions 3 and 4. Ma bo lelamdenu sheroeh hoya la'aba be'iro. Why does the Gemara go mention that the man said, I was a shepherd to my father in his city. Why is that something that the Gemara thought was worthy of mentioning that the man said? Uma ichpas im bo min hadorom o mimokom acher. And also, why did the Gemara mention that the man said, I come from the south? Why would it be relevant to us if the man came from the south or the north or the east or the west? What difference does it make in terms of the story, the episode, the anecdote, where the man came from, and the fact that he worked as a shepherd for his father? So the Zera Shimshon embraces these two questions of the Maharsha on our story to ask, why were those details necessary? It's as if the Gemara would have brought in a description and say the man was wearing these kinds of pants and this kind of shirt, and he was drinking this kind of beverage, as if those things, if those things had no relevance to the story, why would the Gemara mention them? And these two things seem to have no relevance to the story about the encounter, this man's encounter with Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik. And now we'll move to the last question of the 5 questions. Umahu, and what does it mean that the man said to his Yetzer Hara, Lome ata misga'eh, why are you acting arrogantly, v'chule, etc., but we'll replace those words. Why are you acting arrogantly in a world that you don't own, that isn't yours? B'mi shehu asid liyos rima v'soleya, about someone who is in the future going to die and become a body of worms and maggots. Why did the man say that, phrase his questions in that way? He should have said, how are you, Yetzer Hara, taking pride in being arrogant about my hair? If I can easily remove it and shave it, I can just remove the hair. The hair isn't something to get all excited about. Why didn't the man just say that to his Yetzer Hara? Why did the man feel the need to talk about what would happen after his demise? Even though we might possibly say about the issue of why the man mentioned his death, what would happen after his death, maybe he wanted to mention Yom HaMisa, the day of his death, Kede Garsinan Bibrachos, in line with something we learn in Maseches Brachos, I Ozil Mutav, V'ilav Yaskir Lo Yom HaMisa. The Gemara over there makes suggestions for a person whose Yetzer Hara is battling him and trying to convince him to do Averas and to succumb to Averas. So the Gemara gives suggestions as what he should do. And the Gemara says he should first study Torah, and that will weaken the Yetzer Hara, hopefully. If not, say Kriya Shema, and that will help the fight and help the man succeed, hopefully, in his battle against the Yetzer Hara. Then the Gemara says, if the Yetzer Hara goes away after the man learns Torah and says, Kriya Shema Mutav, good, v'ilav, but if not, let's say the Yetzer Hara is really dedicated to bringing this man down, God forbid, then Yizkor Lo Yom HaMisa, he should mention and bring up and ponder the day of death, and think about the fact that every human being's life is very finite, and therefore not get caught up in the tricks of the Yetzer Hara, and God forbid lose one's share in Olam Haba. So the Zera Shimshon says maybe that's why the man brought up the Yom HaMisa, what would happen after he died. Mikol Makam Kosher. But even if you say that, nevertheless, there's still a problem. Lama Kofal Lashono. Why, if that was his intention, then why did he double his language by mentioning both things? Why the man said to his Yetzer Hara, why are you taking pride in a world that's not yours? On someone who in the future will become worm worms and full of worms and maggots. Why did the man mention both of those things? If all he wanted to do was follow the advice of Chazal and mention Yom HaMisa, so good, just mention Yom HaMisa. But there must be a reason, the Zera Shimshon is saying, as to why the man used these two specific statements to fight against his Yetzer Hara. So all of those questions, the Zera Shimshon is now going to begin to answer, and we'll see he doesn't necessarily answer them in the order he asked them, but he's going to tackle each one of them as he begins to explain how the whole conversation between Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik and this man, this Nazir, needs to be viewed differently than the way we viewed it from a simple reading. Let's continue in the bottom of the column in the bottom paragraph. V'yesh lomar, and we can say, the Isa bezohar, it states in the Zohar, Dechad Yetzer Hara Hame Levarnash, when the Yetzer Hara sees a person, Misakein Bereshe, who is fixing up his head, his hair, Misalsel Bisare, we're moving to the top of the second column, and he's curling his hair. So when the Yetzer Hara sees a person taking great care to fix up how their head looks and how their hair is curled, Ached Bey, the Yetzer Hara, grabs him, the Omar, and says, Didi hu, he is mine. The Yetzer Hara feels like he owns a person. He can take possession of a person who is being so careful about his appearance and curling his hair, etc. V'chule. V'Shimon HaTzadik rotze lomar kach. And Shimon HaTzadik wanted to say something to this man along the lines of this statement in the Zohar. Im nazarta atzmecha bishvil Yetzer Hara, if you are becoming a Nazir because you want to fight against your Yetzer Hara, if that's the reason and the motivation that you're becoming a Nazir, lama silsalta bisarcha, why are you coming with such beautiful curled hair? When you curl your hair, the Yetzer Hara latches onto you. The Yetzer Hara feels that it can easily dominate you. And now you're becoming a Nazir to escape from a Yetzer Hara that you incited by being so concerned about your appearance. And now you're going to have to destroy your hair that you took so much care with, that you made so beautiful through all of your curling and all of your attention to your hair. So that's the real question Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik was asking. In other words, we thought, on a simple reading, Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik saw this handsome man with beautiful hair, and he was surprised and said to the man, why are you becoming a Nazir? Meaning, why are you going to become a Nazir and have to shave off your beautiful hair? In other words, we took the story at face value. But the Zera Shimshon says, no, that's not the right way to understand the dialogue between these two individuals. Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik felt that there was a contradiction in this man's actions. On the one hand, he's coming to become a Nazir, which is a response to which is a way of fighting off the Yetzer Hara and separating oneself from things that can lead a person to temptation and lead a person astray. And so that's a wonderful motivation and a wonderful thing. On the other hand, he has beautifully groomed and curled hair and a beautiful appearance. And so the Zera Shimshon says, there's a contradiction here. Why are you seemingly wanting to fight off the Yetzer Hara on the one hand, but inciting the Yetzer Hara and attracting the Yetzer Hara to come try and tempt you with your beautiful hair? V'hu heishiv lo, and so the man responded to him, Roeh hayisi la'aba be'iri. I was a shepherd to my father in my town. And we thought that line was kind of an irrelevant line, as the Maharsha asked, but now the Zera Shimshon will explain that line and exactly what the man meant. V'zos hi hatshuva l'mashe sha'alo. And this was the man's answer in response to what Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik asked him. Loma silsel bisaro. Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik said, why did you curl your hair, which is attracting the Yetzer Hara? The man answered, "De lo kofat yitzro alav al hasilsul," The man said, the Yetzer Hara is not going to come after me because of my curled hair, at least not in the usual way. Because the man was answering and saying, I'm a married man. I'm already married. And how did he communicate that he was a married man? By saying he was a shepherd. Hold on, we'll continue that thought before we get to that in a second. The ein lo od hirhor al ha'averos. The man said, I'm a married man, and therefore I don't have the same temptations to commit sins as a single man would. And how do we know now? How do we know that being a shepherd means he was a married man? This non b'kiddushin perek dalid, because we learned in a Mishnah in Maseches Kiddushin in the 4th chapter. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says in the Mishnah over there, Lo yireh ravak behema. A bachelor, a single man, ravak is a single man, should not become a shepherd of animals. The Mishnah over there tells us, according to Rabbi Yehuda, we'll see the Chachamim have a different opinion in a moment, but according to Rabbi Yehuda, bachelors should not become, unmarried men should not become shepherds. And the concern, according to the commentators, according to the Meforshim, was that if a man spends a lot of time with animals far away from any other people and far away from civilization, he might be tempted to engage in inappropriate behavior. And even though we actually don't follow Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, we decide that the halacha follows the chachamim dimatirin, who permit single men to take jobs as shepherds, because the Chachamim hold that amongst Bnei Yisrael there shouldn't be a suspicion about men participating in indecent acts with animals. In kol zeh, nonetheless, kosav bal Tosfos Yom Tov bereish perek daled dizavim, the commentator Tosfos Yom Tov wrote, the Gedolei Yisrael hayu machmiram al atzmon. Great members of the Jewish people were strict, shelo yireh ravak behema, and said that it's better for single men not to become shepherds. Ayin sham, and you should look over there. So therefore, when the man said, I was a shepherd for my father in my town, he was saying a very important piece of information, because now we understand that a person who's a single man shouldn't work as a shepherd. And even though technically we follow the Chachamim who permit it, nonetheless, people who are trying to be Gedolei Torah, people who are trying to be very strict and following the views of the Gedolei Torah, would not do it if they were single. And therefore the man was saying, I'm a married man. Continuing the Zera Shimshon, v'hasilsul hazeh, in this curling of my hair, lo hoya elo lichvod hamakom. It was for Shem Shemayim. It was to show honor for Hashem. Kidei amrinan b'Shabbos, as we say in Masechta Shabbos, rochet adam panav v'chulei lichvod hamakom. A person should wash his hands and his face and clean himself up nicely. Why? Lichvod hamakom, to show honor for Hashem, because Hashem, we are the creations of Hashem, and we are B'Tselem Elokim. We were created in the image of Hashem. So that should be our intention when we wash up and when we clean ourselves and we make ourselves look presentable. It should be l'shem shemayim. It shouldn't be for some frivolous purpose. It should be to serve Hashem and to honor Hashem. V'im b'shvil leyapos atzmo. If a person does do these things to make himself more attractive in order for him wanting to be more attractive, also, then it would be forbidden. So let's pause for a moment to understand here what exactly went on. The Zera Shimshon is telling us that he's giving us a new understanding. He gave us a new understanding of Reb Shimon HaTzadik's question to the man as to how he seemed to be contradicting himself by wanting to be a Nazir on the one hand, but by curling his hair on the other. Then the man said, I was a shepherd, meaning I'm a married man. And therefore, me curling my hair wasn't to attract anyone, wasn't, God forbid, to seek out other forbidden experiences, my curling my hair, the man was saying, was L'Shem Shemayim. As the Gemara in Masechta Shabbos says, that's the appropriate intention to have when one does clean himself and beautify himself. It should be L'Shem Shemayim, L'chavod HaMakom, to honor Hashem. And now the Zera Shimshon takes it further to understand what else the other things the man said. The Omar, and he said, Roeh Hayisi Be'iri. Not just that I was a shepherd, but I was a shepherd in my town, the Hainu Dorom, which the Gemara told us was from the south. Why from the south? Why is that important? Shesham hayu chachomim gedolim v'tzadikim. There were great, venerable sages and great righteous men in the south, in the Dorom of Eretz Yisrael. K'dei amrinon, as we say, ziknei hanegev. We quote the views of the elders of the Negev, of the south. And so we know that there were great Zikanim and great Chachamim there. And since this man felt about himself, let's pause for a moment before we continue with this next line. So what's relevant about the fact that he was in the south? What's relevant is there were great Chachamim and Zikanim there. And therefore that supports the idea that the man lived in a place where he would have followed the views of these chachamim and these tzaddikim and not have become a shepherd and worked as a shepherd and chosen that occupation unless he was a married man, because he would be machmir like the view of Rabbi Yehuda from the Mishnah in Kiddushin and not allow himself to work as a shepherd if he was a single, if he was a ravak. And so the idea that he was a shepherd and that he lived in the Dorom in the south puts the full idea together to tell us that he was a married man, which we've seen the significance of that. Now let's continue. Now this man, this shepherd from the south, felt about himself. When he looked and when he gazed at his reflection in the water, he felt that his Yetzer Hara was kind of taking force on him. Achas al yofi sa'aro, and he realized that one of the things was on the beauty of his hair, even though he had curled it l'shem shamayim, as we said. Nonetheless, the Yetzer Hara was trying to get him to take account and to consider the beauty of his hair. V'achas, and another thing, al yofi einov, on the beauty of his eyes, v'tov mariso, and his generally good appearance. Lochein, therefore, keneged haseyar omar, corresponding to his hair, he said, Lama ata misgaba olam she'eno shelcha. Why are you, Yetzer Hara, taking pride in something like my hair in this world that doesn't belong to you? Shelamocher ani yochol legaleach. How can I be all prideful in my hair and get all excited about my hair when I can just shave it off? That was his first message to the Yetzer Hara. Uchaneged yofi panav, and if you want me not only to focus on my hair, but my good looks and my eyes and my overall handsome appearance, then my answer to you is all of these good looks are going to end up being in the grave, and there'll be nothing to brag about. Etc. And therefore the man took an oath by the temple service that he would shave off his hair l'shem shamayim. His hatiglachas kedei lahasir haseir lashamayim. I'm going to shave off my hair l'shem shamayim kedei sheyishmereni, in order that shamayim should guard me miyetzer hara al yofi einai, on my beautiful eyes and appearance. Meaning the Zera Shimshon is at pains here. He's being painstaking to explain to us the answer to his fifth and final of his 5 questions. Why did the man kefil lashon? Why did the man say 2 different things to his Yetzer Hara? One about I can shave off my one, and why to his Yetzer Hara? Why be so proud about a world that's not yours? And 2, focusing on the Yom HaMisa, what would happen after he died. And the Zera Shimshon is explaining he was being very specific in his message to his Yetzer Hara. Number 1, my hair is going to be here today and gone tomorrow, so don't get all excited about 2, and don't try and get me excited about how good my hair looks. And number 2, in case you want to try and get me excited about the rest of my appearance, which of course would not be affected by his Nazirus. His hair would be affected, but his face and other good looks wouldn't be affected by him becoming a Nazir. So he said, by doing Nazirus strictly l'shem shamayim, strictly for the sake of heaven, then I can daven and ask Shamayim, ask Hashem to protect me from the Yetzer Hara about falling into any nonsense about the rest of my good looks. Continuing to the next paragraph. Miyad Amaditi. So Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik said, I immediately jumped up and said, Kamoscha Yirbu Nozrei Nazirus b'Yisrael. There should be more Nazirim like you. They should multiply amongst the Bnei Yisrael. There should be more like you. V'koshe. We have to pose a little bit of a difficulty here. Mahu Kamoscha. What did he mean when he said like you? V'chi im lo yu kamohu lo yu yecholim lahazir. Did Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik mean to say that if people were not like this man, then they shouldn't become Nazirim? That wouldn't make sense. That would be ludicrous for him to say that. So what did he mean? What did Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik mean when he said there should be more Nazirim like you? Elam mishum the Rabbi Elazar HaKapar Sirale. But Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik had in mind the view of another Tana, the great Rabbi Elazar HaKapar, who held Rabbi Elazar HaKapar said, if someone becomes a Nazir and separates himself from drinking wine, that is a sinful act, meaning that a person should conduct himself or herself in such a way and lead such a life that they don't have to become a Nazir and deprive themselves of drinking wine and having great products. Hashem wanted us to enjoy wine and great products, and so it's better not to have to separate oneself and deprive oneself from those things. And because of that opinion, Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik thought, V'hani mili, when is it true that Rabbi Elazar Kapar said it's a bad thing to become a Nazir in a certain way? That was referring to a case where a person became a Nazir out of general piety. In other words, they didn't have any specific, they weren't responding to any specific problems with the Yetzer Hara or heavy temptations or things like that, but rather they thought, if I become a Nazir, I can reach even a higher level of Chasidus, and that's where Rabbi Elazar HaKapar advocated against becoming a Nazir. Aval im hayu muchrach lasos kach kedei lihinatzil miyad Yitro. But if a person felt compelled to become a Nazir in order to save himself or herself from their Yetzer Hara, Shita Vadai de Shapir Avid, then certainly this is a good thing to do. Certainly this was an admirable thing to do. Afilu Rabbi Elazar HaKapar, even according to the viewpoint of Rabbi Elazar HaKapar. L'chein Amar Lo, and therefore Rabbi Shimon HaTzadik said to this man, Kemoscha Yirbu. People should multiply and become Nazirim like you. Because your motivation and incentive was to weaken your Yetzer Hara. It wasn't just to deprive yourself of things in this world in the hope of reaching a higher level. It was in order to fight against your Yetzer Hara. And from now that you had this level of motivation, we see that the Yetzer Hara will not be able to overcome you until you will regret your vow of Nazirus. Shehaba letaher misayin oso, someone who comes to purify himself. From Shamayim, they give that person assistance. And now we can go back and explain something we mentioned in the very beginning, this issue of charata, of regret. So let's go back and bring that point to the fore again and understand exactly what the Zera Shimshon is referring to. We mentioned the halacha that if a Nazir accidentally becomes tamei meis, actually accidentally becomes in contact with a dead body, that they lose their Nazirus ends, and they lose all the days that they have served as a Nazir already from their vow. That disappears, and they have to start over again and do the entire period of Nazirus that they pledged from the beginning. And they bring a korban asham, as we mentioned. as it says in the psukim. So Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik used to refrain from eating from a korban asham from one of these people because he had a concern and a fear that the person might be thinking, I originally wanted to become a Nazir, but now that all my days that I was a Nazir are gone and lost, I restricted myself tremendously for all those days, and now they disappear, and I have to start over from the beginning. The person might have regret. The person might have harata and not really want to continue and start from the beginning and be a Nazir further on to start over and complete the whole process again. And because of that harata that the person might have, and because of the fear that Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik had about that, his concern about that, he would refrain from eating from their korban asham in general. However, and this is the point that Zera Shimshon is making right here, this is the last point he made. However, Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik was so impressed with this man's dedication and his complete, pure sincerity about becoming a Nazir, specifically to fight against his Yetzer Hara and his powerful feelings about it, that he assessed the situation. He felt this is a man who feels no charata. Even if he has to start from the beginning, he will never regret becoming a Nazir, and he will complete his Nazirus with the same full heart that he initiated it from the beginning, and therefore he did eat. Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik did eat from this man's korban asham because he felt there were no doubts about this man's sincerity, even starting over. Now the Zera Shimshon adds an alternative explanation of what Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik might have meant by kamoscha, by like you. Inami, alternatively, kach perusho. This might be the explanation of kamoscha, of there should be more nazirim like you. Klomar, what he meant to say was, kol sheyiyeh noeh kamoscha. Everyone who is handsome and attractive like you, mitzvah alav la'asos kach. It's a special mitzvah for that person to become a Nazir. V'im yu rabim kamoscha, and if there are many people like you who are so attractive and so handsome, strikingly so, yehi rotzon sheyirbu nami nozrei nazirus b'Yisrael, then God willing, there'll be all of those people will become Nazirim kedei lahatzil atzmam min hachet, in order to save themselves from chait. So the Zera Shimshon says it's possible that that's what Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik meant when he said kamoscha. If there are other people who are as attractive as you are, they better become a Nazir like you became a Nazir to protect themselves from going astray. V'siyim, last paragraph, v'siyim devorav ba'omar. And Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik concluded his words to the man, and he said, Alecha Omar Kra, about you the pasuk said, Ish v'chule ki yafti lindor nezer nazir lahazir lashem. The pasuk in the Torah that talks about becoming a Nazir and taking the oath, the vow of Nazirus, it's referring to you. V'koshe, this is a difficulty. V'chi olav levado ne'amar akra hazeh. Is it possible Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik meant you're the only person that the pasuk refers to? What did he mean the pasuk is referring to you? Obviously, the pasuk is referring to others who take the vow of Nazirus as well. Ela lefisha pachas yitzral adam zeh bishvil shnei devarim. But rather what he meant was, since this man took a vow of Nazirus based on the fact that the Yetzer Hara was trying to tempt him over two things, Kenizkar La'el, as we mentioned previously, over his beautiful hair and over his beautiful eyes and the rest of his appearance, V'hapasuk shel ish ki yafli, and this pasuk, Ne'amar b'loshen kaful, it is said in a double language, lindor neder, to vow a vow, ve'od, and also nazir lahazir, to become a nazir, and to take an oath of nazirus. Mishum hachi amar lo, that is why Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik said to the man, alecha ne'amar amikra hazeh. This pasuk, which uses a double language about vows of nazirus, is almost a hint to your situation, because you became a Nazir based on two concerns of the Yetzer Hara, somehow tempting you about two of your physical attributes. And the pasuk talks about, uses a double language as well. So Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik was saying there's a unique kind of connection between you, this man who became a Nazir, and the pasuk. So we can just do a brief kind of summary here and say that the Zera Shimshon has gone deeply into this story about the story of Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik and the Nazir from the Gemara, and we've learned a lot of things about it. But certainly one of the takeaway themes is to be, as Rabbi Shimon Hatzadik was so found this man's motivation so remarkable, so too we always should strive when it comes to doing mitzvos and serving Hashem, to do it completely l'shem shemayim, just like this Nazir did in the story. Yashikov to joining us and learning in Zera Shimshon this week, and we look forward, God willing, to learning in Zera Shimshon again next week.